So what happens when you're cruising and you run out of money? Then what? Hi, I'm Nika Waters and welcome to the Boat Galley podcast. Today, I'm going to be sharing some ideas and thoughts that you can start answering before you leave to go cruising, because the question about what happens if you run out of money is definitely one that lots of us struggle with. Today's episode of the Boat Galley podcast is sponsored by Saving to Sail. Whether you want to start a blog or an online business, get paid to write, or get a remote job, Saving to Sail gives you the knowledge, tools, and inspiration to make money while cruising. Visit savingtosail.com/boatgalley for exclusive bonuses and use the code BG20 for 20% off all Saving to Sail e-courses. Saving to Sail, helping you work online so you can leave the dock sooner and sail the world longer. That's savingtosail.com. What if you run out of money? You're planning this great adventure. You're planning this cruise and you're going to go off, and you've looked and you've tried to figure it out. You've read all the blogs. You've watched all the YouTube videos about how much it costs. You think you're set, but then you realize that a lot of other people say, well, it's going to cost as much as you have, and you take a budget and you double it, and then you add 100% and you double that, and you're probably close to what it's going to cost, and you start to panic a little bit. Certainly, if you run a Google search about how much it costs to sail around the world, it doesn't take very long before you're going to get 60 million hits. And that's just that particular wording. You can find lots of evidence that it's going to cost you what you think it's going to cost you. And you can find lots of evidence that also tells you it's going to cost a whole lot more. So what if you run out of money? There are a number of options, of course. You could take that idea of what if we run out of money and just be paralyzed and not go. I don't think that's a great way to go. Clearly, I wouldn't be talking about going cruising if that was the way that I felt. But I will say that really the whole idea about budget and what you have is it's largely an academic one, because you're either going to have enough money or you're not. And all the planning that you do and all the rest of it doesn't mean one single thing when you're looking at a bank account where 0 is the number that's there. So what happens? What do you do then? And yeah, like any of my favorite answers to any cruising question, the answer is it depends, which doesn't actually answer the question. But hold on for just a second. If you look at your life on land right now and ask yourself the exact same question now, what happens if you lost your job and you couldn't find another one? What happens if all of a sudden, I don't know, some weird, bizarre thing happened in the universe and your money just disappeared out of your bank account? What are some things that you might do to keep yourself going? You might start dumpster diving outside of grocery stores for food. You might move in with family or friends. Maybe you'd sell all your major possessions and live in your car. Maybe you would all of a sudden decide that you're going to start that side hustle that you've been thinking about and dreaming about and saying, maybe someday, maybe you're just going to really work hard at that. You might apply for any and every single job that you could see that had a help wanted sign, or even the ones that didn't say help wanted on. They might be jobs that you never thought you would work, and they might be in places that you never thought you'd live. You might babysit, or house sit, or pet sit, or mow lawns, or scrub toilets, or beg on a street corner. My point is, you'd probably scramble and figure something out. It might not be ideal, and it's likely probably not the way that you had planned on your life going. But my bet is that if you were faced with that situation on land, you would figure out what to do. The question does seem to loom a little bit larger when you're talking about retiring with the hope of not going back to work, or you're deciding that you want to sail around the world and you, by your best guesstimates, you can figure on, 6 months or a year's worth of time where you don't have to work. Question seems to loom larger when you are looking and you're saying, even if you're already out there and you thought you were only going for a year and then you realize, oh my gosh, I really like this lifestyle and I want to keep going. What do I do then? Well, I will say that to me, as I think about it, there are lots and lots of ideas and examples out there from people who talk about having that exact situation happen. They talk about being out cruising and running out of money and what they do with that. There's Joshua Slocum, who talks about bartering places where he stopped. There's Annie Hill in her book, Voyaging on a Small Income, who talks, I remember pretty vividly in there, about buying 49 cans of sardines when they were in Antigua because they couldn't afford that 50th can. Bean Gifford on Sailing Totem talks in a couple of her blog posts about how they looked and they realized they were about to run out of money and they decided where they were going to sail to make it easier to find a job and work and earn some money. That was halfway around the world. Lynn Pardey, in so many of her Seraphin titles, talks about their particular philosophy about cruising, which was that they sailed until the money was about to run out, and then they sailed somewhere that they could work to refill the kitty. All of these things, well, okay, minus Joshua Slocum probably in terms of planning ahead, but a lot of these examples include being aware of the money that you have. They include looking ahead and planning ahead. And no, it's not like you want to plan to run out of money, but you can plan to figure out what it is that you want to do. And that does involve tracking and being aware. If you know that you have spent $200 a month for the past 6 months and you have $200 left in your bank account, you can figure probably roughly that you have a month's left of funds. You've got a month to get somewhere. You've got a month to research a place that you can go to work legitimately and what you can do with that. And maybe it's a month to say, I'm gotta put my boat up on the Heart or find a place to leave it and fly back to where I can get work. Those are options, and those are things that you do. However it is that you look at the nuts and bolts of your money, I do suggest that you start writing down your costs and your income. Even the little things, even the $2.76 on screws for the bunk project, that yes, that's actually an entry in our budgeting app. The other piece to do with planning is that I think particularly when you're talking about leaving a little bit of your regular safety net behind, you need to look at the worst case scenario. You need to ask yourself that question, what happens if we run out of money, and then actually answer it. Put into place your thoughts and your practical actions that you could take. I gave you some examples earlier. One of them involved dumpster diving for food, which probably for a lot of people doesn't fit with their idea of what they would want to do. But if you have a whole bunch of actions that you could take or would feel like you needed to take if you did run out of money, if you're not willing to take those actions that you identify ahead of time, then you might actually just need to change some of your plans. Because if you say, I'm not willing to work in an industry outside of what I'm used to working in, then you might be limited to where you can actually continue to cruise or start to cruise. If you say, I'm not willing to flip burgers because I don't like the grease or I have a philosophical objection to money coming from the meat industry, that is absolutely your prerogative and your choice. But don't sail someplace where that's the only kind of work that you could legitimately find. Two things that I'm really advocating. One is that you track, because it's a whole lot easier to plan ahead if you know where you stand on the money piece. But the other thing is to really be clear with yourself about what sorts of things you're willing to do. What sorts of things are you willing to do to answer that question? So rather than stick your head underneath a blanket and play ostrich, as I like to call it, and pretend that what if we run out of money conversation won't ever happen to you, face it head on. If you face your fears head on, you can become very much more aware of your options and your opportunities, as well as be really clear with yourself about what you're willing to do or not do. Now, of course, all of the hopes and plans that you have can be totally dashed with a bad accident or an unexpected emergency. Those things happen despite your best plans and your best thoughts and your best planning ahead. I do hope that you've built in a cushion to absorb such a thing, which might include things like insurance. It might include things like I'm putting money aside in an account that I never look at that I can draw on if I need to. But in terms of regular day-to-day living, if you're tracking your expenditures as you go along and comparing that actual reality to the idea of the budget was before you left, you won't be surprised. Cruising is all about flexibility, and it's about communication. Sometimes it's not that those things are really fun, neither the flexibility or the communication that goes along with it, but they absolutely make life a whole lot smoother in the long run. So what will we do if we run out of money? Well, for starters, we're going to track what we're spending. This is what we've done for forever. And when we went cruising the first time in the 90s, we had one of those kind of month at a glance calendar sorts of things. Ours had some grumpy woman whose name I forget, some cartoon character, but it had a little box for every day of the month, on the month. And every single day we would write down every little thing that we spent and tally it all up at the end. And it would include things like where we were and what we had for dinner and lunch and breakfast. So all those things are kind of caught up together in these tiny little boxes. It's continued as we've gotten a little bit more tech dependent, maybe is a way to put it. Although I do kind of like writing it down on the physical little calendar. So I'm looking for one of those for when we leave again. But we'll track, we'll plan. And if it looks like we're not on track, if it looks like we're going to run out of money or we're not tracking the way we want to, our plan is totally multifaceted. We'll tighten our belts in terms of food spending, which is likely to be our largest expense on an ongoing basis. We'll probably look and figure out our cruising grounds with an eye to less pricey places or places that have fewer temptations on land and fewer things that would ask us or make us want to think about going on land excursions and spending money that way. We probably won't be able to fly the kids in for college vacations, and we definitely won't be taking any trips back home. We'll work harder on side hustles like Fast Seas, online courses. And if worse comes to worse, we will stop somewhere for a while and do work of whatever kind we can, legally and locally. And in short, we'll just plain figure it out. However you're going to figure it out, I hope that we get to share in Anchorage sometime in 2020. Thanks so much for listening to the Boat Galley podcast. We love it when we have comments from our listeners, and we love it when you share this with your friends. Have the most fantastic week and have the most fantastic year.